Hey guys, welcome back to the Tech Media Maven YouTube channel. Here at Tech Media Maven, we are all about simplifying tech in such a way that even you as a beginner could grasp the concepts easily. Today, we're continuing off from where we stopped in our last tutorial, which focused on data analysis in Excel for beginners. There we focused on functions and formulas. Today we're going a step further, and in this tutorial we're going to be covering data visualization. Primarily, we're going to be showing how to use graphs in Excel. Remember, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, what are you waiting for? Okay, that's on a lighter note. So, essentially, what is data visualization? Data visualization is the art of representing information and data visually. So instead of staring at rows of numbers or raw data, we use charts, graphs, possibly even maps to create a more accessible way to understand trends, patterns, and outliers in data. So, why do we visualize data? Essentially, we visualize data for two things. The first is what is known as the exploratory data analysis. The exploratory data analysis, such as data analysts, statisticians, and scientists, use data visualization to explore hidden trends and patterns in the data. It's like a detective work, more or less. It helps, visualizing the data helps uncover insights better. I'm going to show you that in the course of our video. And the second is what is known as the explanatory data analysis. And once we have understood the data, the next thing we want to do is we want to craft a story using the visuals to convey our findings. Think of it as storytelling with data, essentially. So some of the examples of data visualization, like I said earlier, include bar charts, line charts, pie charts, and scatter plots, just to name a few. But today we'll be focusing on a bar chart. So, for those who are just joining for the first time, the dataset I'm using is going to be available in the description below. There's going to be a Google Drive link where I shall share the dataset so that you can also walk along with me. And if you're just joining, let me run you through what this data is about. So essentially, this data is about some interns who are in the university but went for internship for a certain amount of time. And during that period of internship, they were working in different companies and were paid hourly wages. So the administrative aspect of the university is trying to analyze, get the information of the students, how long they worked, how much they were paid per organization, and do some maybe quick analysis to understand certain insights from that data. Now we've captured up to the point of, we've done this up to the point of doing rough analysis such as understanding the total sums, understanding the average hours spent working, the minimum hours spent working, the maximum hours spent working, how many people worked, the tax. Now we want to go as far as visualizing these data to make it more appealing. Because, okay, quick question. If I ask you under 3 seconds, tell me who had the highest income. 1, 2, 3. You see what I mean? If I ask you again, under 2 seconds, tell me who had the lowest hourly wage. 1, 2. I can almost guarantee hardly any of you got the right answer. So, if I were to show you this data in a pictorial form and ask you any of these questions, intuitively, you are going to actually tell me who had what exactly at the time I asked you. So I'm going to show you first of all how to do a rough visualization before we go into more specific aspects of visualization. Now, Excel by default has a way of automatically trying to figure out how to best visualize your data. If I were to highlight everything on this sheet, or not everything, but what I consider important, so the name, the department, the hourly wage, and what have you, and I come over here to insert, if you notice this insert there's a section which says recommended charts. If I click on the recommended charts, Excel is already trying to recommend certain forms of visualization based on its own understanding of my data. Now, sometimes this is actually very accurate and apt, and it will give you what you want. Other times, it might not be the best way to represent it. So let me click on this, for instance, and see what is recommended with this. Okay, so as you can see, it's visualizing the data in form of hourly wage, number of hours spent working, and total income. While this is not a bad way, if you look at the figures, the individual figures, you realize that they don't all fall under the same scale. So certain information will be lost, and it now defeats the whole purpose. But I just did this so that I could show you how to automatically visualize your data even when you really don't know what you're looking for. Sometimes through its recommended charts, you might find impressive ways to visualize your data. Remember, I came to the insert, and under insert, I went to recommended charts and clicked on it. So I'm going to delete this. And I want us to be more intentional with how we want to visualize this data. So we're going to start by using a new sheet. This sheet 2, I will name it Data Visualization. Visualization. Okay. And for starters, I want to know or have a visual idea of the total income. So for me, what's important is the name. I want to know this by virtue of the names of the people and know who earned the highest and who earned the lowest. So I'll come to my new sheet and paste a table, the part I copied, which is name. I'll go back to the data analysis sheet, go to the column for total income, copy everything apart from the cell that speaks to the total, because that's not part of what I want to analyze. That was just for calculation purposes. I wanted to know what everyone earned. So I copy it out and come to this cell, and just beside the name, I paste it. Now watch what will happen. I'm pasting with the default form of pasting, which is Control V or Command V, depending on what system you're using. Does anyone know why these values didn't paste? Let me go back to show you that there are actually values there. See all the numbers. But now, over here, there's an issue. It's not pasting, and it's giving an error message. And if let's say error in the value. Now, let's go back and try and understand what happened. Now, if you go back here, you realize that while these are numbers, if you click on the numbers, on the formula bar over here, what you see are not numbers. What you see are cell references that we used in understanding. So we had calculated this using, in the previous video, we had shown it. We used the formula function, the formula option to calculate all these figures. So now these cell references are only valid in this sheet. And by the time we came to this sheet, if you notice at the same formula bar, what Excel sees is the cell reference. But the cell reference B5 and C5, which is this and this, doesn't contain any figure for Excel to calculate. And you come to this one, you go to the formula bar, you see B7, C7, and you go there and you realize B7 is an empty cell and C7 represents Tony. So if you say B7 times C7, you're indirectly saying in this sheet, empty cell times Tony, which is actually not a value. So that is why all these things came as an error. So how do we rectify it? First, let me Control Z and go back, or rather, let me just highlight everything and delete it. I'm going to use the erase all contents to delete it. Now I'll come back here and highlight again. Control C to copy, go back to visualization, and now I'm going to paste. But rather than just using the Ctrl V or the normal paste option, I shall come here. Rather than using this paste option, I shall come here to paste special. Now what I want is just the values. I don't want the formulas anymore. In the previous sheet, the formulas is what helps me get the values. In this sheet, all I'm looking for is the value, or maybe the value and the way it was formatted in the other sheet. So I can go for values and source formatting. So I click on it and voila, it gives me the source formatting, which is how it was formatted in this sheet. Let me just show you a difference so that you understand where the source formatting also came into play. I'm going to go back and I'll erase all contents, and now I go to paste. Okay, I have to copy it again, sorry. So copy up to this point, Control C to copy. I go back here and I go to paste, and let's say I paste only values. Well, it already had the formatting, so it might not work in the way I want. But if I come to an empty cell and paste only values, you see how it works. Only values paste in this way, like a bare text. And if I come here and click values and source formatting, you notice the difference. It copied the source formatting, which was the header, the total column header, the way I designed it. So notice the difference between these two. So it helps you understand when you want to paste. Are you interested in pasting only the values? Are you interested in also copying the format, which was the design attached to the table as well? So I'm just going to clear this from here because I don't need it. So clear all, and I'm back to square one. So now, like I said, I want to visualize this data. So I can use what I showed you and highlight this table now and come to insert and recommended charts. And see, it's already recommending charts based on its understanding of my data. Notice that even the number of charts it's recommending is smaller because of how well it understands my data. I think I'll prefer this column bar chart. And it's already making so much sense now. Like, it's already making so much sense now. So this is a graph of the total column. Now, if I ask you in 1 second, tell me who earned the least, you can already spot the person over here. If I tell you in 1 second, tell me who earned the most, you can already spot the person over here, which is Hannah. Now, this is the beauty of data visualization, essentially. But we can still go step further to editing how our chart looks. Notice now we have a ribbon called the chart design, which helps us customize this chart. So we can go to add elements, to add different elements to our charts. For instance, I can add an axis title. Let's say I add an axis title to the bottom, and I call this axis title names. I click on it again. I go to add elements. What else do I want to add? I can add a chart title. Well, there already is one. Which is why I can see this blue tick. I can add a data table to the bottom. So let's say if someone is staring at this chart and they actually wants to know the exact figures attached to each of the columns, I add a data table, and now you see underneath the names there's also the exact amounts now listed. So even Rihanna, that looks so close to zero, you can now see that actually this is the actual amount that Rihanna earned. Yeah, and I know you're worth more than this. Don't worry, I'm just joking. Okay, so going further, I can add things like data labels. So data labels, in the event I didn't want to add these data tables to the bottom, I could also add data labels to the top. So for instance, now you see these numbers are now represented over here. These are data labels. If I want to be stylish with the data labels, I could come and use what is called the data callout. It creates this cartoon-like way of displaying the data labels. Just watch. Aha. So it's like a callout. All this is subject to what you are working with and the best form or the most professional form of displaying it as the need may be. Let me just remove this because it might be a bit distracting to focus on what we want. So Control Z, Control Z. Let's see. Okay, we can work with this. Now, like I said, part of the aspect of visualization we want to focus on is we want to be able to analyze the data we have, we want to be able to tell a story to understand the data better. So looking at this chart, this chart is called the total income. And you could look at it and you wonder, does that mean the people that earned less were paid less? That's a very safe assumption to make at this stage because you're looking at it. Some people earn so high, some earn so low. What would be the reason? Is it that the companies that we're working on paid them more than the rest? Now, what if that's not the only dynamics to it? Now, we will now want to draw another insight through visualizing another set of data. So for instance, now, if I'm using that assumption, it means Rihanna, who earned a total of $39.8, was probably paid the least. Now we'll go on an experiment to find out how true that is. And if Hannah, who earned a total of $3,200, meant she was actually paid the most. Interesting. Now we go back to our sheet one and we now want to create a different visualization. And this time the visualization is going to be with the name as usual. We'll go back to this sheet and paste it, let's say somewhere down here, the name. And now we want to look at the hourly wages, how much they earn per hour, so that we know how well the company is paid. And we go back to the data visualization sheet. Now, notice something. The hourly wages doesn't have a formula. It's just a normal figure. So I can comfortably just use my Ctrl V or normal paste option without using paste special, and it pastes. Voila, unlike the first one where we had to paste as value. Pay attention to these key details. They will help you out, or they might be the things that will confuse you in future. And if you don't follow it now, you might feel, Excel is so hard. It's not that hard. So now we'll go back to the way we visualize the first chart. We highlight everything here, and we go to insert, we go to recommended charts, and we use a similar chart. And let's expand this chart. Let's adjust the size. In short, let me move the chart to come somewhere similar to where this one is. Sorry, 1 minute. I want to move the position of the chart. Why is it not moving? Why is it being stubborn? Okay. Okay. Now I'll zoom in. And remember the first theory we're having. Does it mean that the ones who earned a total income that was so low meant the companies paid them so low? Now let's look at Rihanna. Notice something. The only person who can drag the same earning capacity with Hannah happens to be Rihanna. I don't even know whether it's even is that it has to do with the way their names rhyme. So it's like if your names are like that, it means you're earning that high. Well, but now studying our data, have we seen this interesting insight? If we were looking at the numbers alone, it would have been confusing to spot out these differences. But now that we're looking at the data being visualized in an appealing manner, we can examine the data properly and be like, oh, wow, okay. I mean, looking at this data, we see that yes, while in some cases, like the first three, the amount they earn correlates to the total income that they had over time. Looking at the last set, the last five, we realize that is not the case. A good number of them were actually earning very good, decent hourly wages, but their total income was poor. So what would have had to play in making their total income poor? Remember, the total income is essentially the hourly wage times the number of hours worked, which means in the case of Rihanna, the only reason why she earned so low is not because the company she was working in, maybe Fenty, was paying her so low, but rather because the number of hours she committed to work wasn't as much as someone like Hannah, who equally was earning high and also put in so much more hours to work. Or the number of hours she put in wasn't the same with someone like Ikenna, who wasn't earning as much as Rihanna, but put in way more hours to work. Yes. So I hope you found this interesting, this simple visualization, and how we have also been able to craft out a story from what had appeared as a very random information or data being captured here to something now that can now be turned into a report, can now be used to conduct further analysis, can now be used to create some form of recommendation if it were for governments or policymakers or the school administration. There is now so much more we can do just from this simple process of understanding our data. I'm glad you stayed with me to this point, and we're also going to be delving deeper as time goes on into other more complex areas of Excel. So, one of the best ways you can know about this thing I'm saying is if you subscribe to this channel. If you don't subscribe, I will drop the information and you will not know. So please subscribe to the Tech Media Maven YouTube channel. Like this video if you found it useful. Share it to someone you love if you also found it useful. And maybe just as a form of encouragement, please leave a comment so that you can put a smile on my face. Thank you guys for being a part of this process. I really appreciate you. And until we meet again, this is Ikenna from Tech Media Maven, and I'm saying bye for now. Do have a lovely week, month, year,